Hello everyone, and welcome back to my beginner series. I am so excited that you are finding these videos helpful. So today we're going to talk about how to re-ink your stamp pads. That's right, we're going to talk about your StazOn pad, your Memento pad. We're going to talk about your classic stamp pads as well. So you're going to want to stick with me throughout the video as I share with you how to re-ink each of these and maybe some tips and tricks along the way. And if you like my video today, be sure to like and subscribe. That's right, if you click that like button, and be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so that you're notified of any of my upcoming videos. I have several more to share with you, and I am super excited about this series, and knowing that you are excited just makes it even more awesome to share. So thank you for joining me, and I think we're going to jump right into re-inking our stamp pads. All right, so the first set of stamp pads that I'm going to show you, these are our classic stamp pads, right? So this is just our classic dye-based ink. Meaning that, that they are quick to dry and they're water-based. So I love these inks, and these are probably what you have the most of. So let's talk about these ink refills. So each color, each Stampin' Up stamp pad, you can purchase the ink refill. Now you can purchase it as an individual refill, or you can purchase it as a color family. That's right. So this is how a color family comes packaged. So you can see it's all 10 colors in the bold color family. Or you can choose to purchase them individually. So let me bring in my Stampin' Up catalog, and you can see right here, these are my Brights collection, and Melon Mambo is in that collection. And so you can see here I can buy individual refills, or I can purchase the refills as a bundle. So that is an option as well if I need all of those colors. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in, okay? So what we're going to do first is I'm just going to kind of put these guys up here, and I'm going to open up my stamp pads. All right, so this one is Crushed Curry. This one is Melon Mambo. So just a couple of different things. Before I get ready to re-ink my ink pad, how do I know if it really needs to be re-inked? Well, because when you are stamping, I just have a flower here. When you are stamping, maybe your image is getting a little bit lighter. Maybe the color, it doesn't seem as true to the color. And so that's how you can kind of tell. And so let's just see. I'm going to ink that up and stamp it straight down. So that color's pretty good. But sometimes I feel like, when it gets a little bit lighter, you might need to add more ink. Now, the other thing I want to show you, and let me just clean this stamp first so that I don't forget to do that. So the other thing I want to show you is look at this Melon Mambo pad. Do you see? And you may or may not with the camera, but do you see some like little white specks? Sometimes when you're crafting with others and people are using, or maybe even you're using a baby wipe or something like that to clean your stamps, or you are maybe dabbing it on a paper towel, you might get some fibers or some types of little lint on top of your stamp pad. So before we get re-inking, I'm going to show you one of the ways that you can accomplish to kind of clean those off. Now, if you have a lint roller, that would be perfect. I couldn't find my lint roller, so I went to some duct tape. That was the next best choice. So I'm going to take some duct tape, and I'm just going to rip a piece off. And I'm sure some of you have also picked up lint this way too, right? So I'm going to stick my fingers in here in this tape. I've just rolled it and taped it. And I'm just going to very gently touch my stamp pad. And by doing that, I'm going to pick up any of those extra little fibers that might be hanging around on the top of my stamp pad. And that looks amazing. That is super clean. So I'm very excited about that. And now I feel good about adding some re-inker to that stamp pad. So let's start off adding it to our Crushed Curry. And let me show you, this may have happened to you before, and you may have gone, oh my goodness, did I ruin it? What happened? So when you're re-inking your stamp pad, you're going to want to shake those inker bottles, right? Those re-inker bottles, just get them, shake it up really, really good. So, you know, as you're re-inking it, if you start dropping it in some different places, right? Have you ever done this and re-inked it this way? You've let it soak in, and then you've thought, okay, I'm just going to use my stamp pad and kind of push it all around, and okay, perfect. And then I'm going to stamp it. And you get this uneven tone. Do you see that? In that paper, some of the lights and the darks and how uneven that is. That's because that ink has not been fully pushed around inside that stamp pad. That can make you cranky. And sometimes you can actually see the spots on the stamp. So we want to avoid that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our re-inker, and you might want to protect your space, you know, because when you're working with re-inkers and that sort of thing, you can clean this up. But, you know, maybe just having a paper towel or something down to protect your space is also very good. So when I re-ink my stamp pads, I kind of go like like you're frosting a cake, right? So back and forth, and then you can take it the other direction. I'm not putting a ton of ink down, but I am covering my ink pad. Now you might wonder, well, how much is too much? Well, I personally would start out with just a wee bit, you know, maybe in one direction. And then if you stamp with it and you feel like it needs more, well, then add more. But the other nice thing is if you take a plastic spoon and the back of the spoon, you can push that ink around. So you can kind of push that ink around and go from side to side and back and forth. And you see it starts to kind of push that ink inside that stamp pad. And you can just push that ink all around and kind of get it so that it is even all the way around in that stamp pad. So the idea here is that next time I go to stamp, that hopefully my ink is evenly distributed through the stamp pad and I will get a nice clear image. So I'm going to set that spoon over there out of the way, and I'm going to bring my paper back in and ink up my stamp really good here, kind of tap it all around, and let's go ahead and stamp it down and straight up. And so now you can see I have a nice crisp image, and it's nice and clear, and the ink is clear, clear, but it is even. That's the word I'm looking for, versus that one not so much. So let's go over that one more time. So that was crushed curry. Now if I wanted that to be a little darker, I could certainly do that, right? I could continue to add a bit more if I wanted to. I'm just going to clean that stamp. Okay, and so now let's bring back in Melon Mambo. So I showed you how I cleaned off some of the lint off of that stamp pad. I have a Melon Mambo re-inker here, and let's do the same thing here. So I'm just going to squeeze my re-inker, and I'm just going to kind of go up and down. Again, think of you're frosting a cake. That's what I like to think of when I do it. And then you're going to add your little cap back on. And then I have my plastic spoon here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. You're going to apply a little bit of pressure in there and just move that ink all around in that stamp pad, right? So, you know, that just gives you that nice even coverage. Now, what happens if you get a bunch of ink right in here pooling and you're like, okay, I need to make it even? Well, again, grab your plastic spoon. And if you've got a lot of ink pooling in one area, push it to the sides or push it around. And you can really even out that stamp pad so you have that beautiful stamp. Okay, so that's how you re-ink your classic Stampin' pads, your ink pads. Now I want to show you one other thing. Do you see kind of around the edge? There's kind of, you know, got some ink around the edge. Maybe you like it nice and clean. So there's a couple different things that you can use. I have an alcohol pad here, and sometimes I'll use those. Otherwise, I would probably try to maybe use my simple chamois. You could use that. You might even be able to wet a paper towel if you wanted to. But basically what you're going to do is you can just stick this right here on the edge and kind of do a clean swipe right down the stamp pad, right? Now to keep it from getting on your fingers, you're going to have to just be mindful and fold it back and forth. But while you're re-inking, maybe that's the time to kind of, whoops, see, I just got it on my finger. So it might be the time to just kind of clean up your stamp pads. And again, that's just kind of going straight in one stroke. It's what I find, straight down. Okay, so that's how you're going to clean those stamp pads. And you're also going to re-ink them. So awesome, awesome. And again, when do you know they need to be re-inked? Well, clearly, if you are stamping and the image is getting lighter and lighter and it's not looking true to the color, well, then you need to re-ink it, right? Or maybe you're looking at the stamp pad and you can visibly see that the ink is really lighter in different spots. Well, then maybe it's time to re-ink it or add some refreshener. All right, so now what I'm excited to show you is, here, check this out. So we also have these uninked Stampin' Spots. And so these are really cool if you are wanting to kind of make some of your own stamp pads. Let's just say that, you know, maybe you are wanting some colors, but you don't want to buy the big stamp pads or whatnot. Or maybe you're traveling and you don't want to take all of your big stamp pads with you. So these little re-inkers, this is how they come. They come 5 to a pack. This is the uninked Stampin' Spots. And what you would do then is you would purchase a re-inker. And so here I have polished pink, and I'm going to show you exactly how I created one of these. So when you get it, you can open it up. Sorry, I have some red on from touching that, that pink stamp pad. But you can see it's kind of like, it's a felt, kind of a linen here, and then you have your cushion or your foam underneath. And so you're going to shake up your re-inker, and then what you're going to do is hold your, hold your little pad. And then what I do is the exact same process. Just kind of go back and forth and back and forth. And the cool thing is once you get started, you're going to see the ink is absorbing into the pad. I like to kind of look and gauge from the sides too, because once that ink starts getting really good in that stamp pad, then you're going to see it kind of, do you see it kind of bleeding downward on the sides? And then what I do is I actually kind of come over closer to the sides and just squeeze a little bit more on each one of these little sides. Just so that I can make sure that this is nice and inked up really, really well on all sides. Now the key to these is you want to make sure that you keep the lids on them, right? They do stack really nicely, but you are going to have to freshen them up, absolutely. You know, so you're going to have to freshen them up here and there. But the good thing is you're not using a ton of ink as you re-ink those. So you will have the opportunity to have quite a bit left. So again, I would just keep going until I had the desired amount of ink in my Stampin' Spot. Now you're probably wondering, all right, well, I have my Stampin' Spot, but how do I know what color it is? Okay, so that's a very good question, and I think there's lots of different ways that you could do this. So if you have these and you know this is polished pink, you could stamp a, let's just say you stamp a 1-inch circle, right? And you put that right on the top and you label it. Or maybe you have a label maker. Well, you can use a label maker. Maybe you want to put a piece of tape, just a little small piece of tape, and you want to mark it. So, but I'm going to show you what I did to label mine. So what I did is I took a piece of polished pink scrap paper that I had, and I cut a 1 by 1 inch square. That's right, I cut a 1 by 1 inch square, and then I took some tear and tape adhesive. And so let me show you that. I thought I had it out here, but I think I put it away. So I took some tear and tape adhesive, and I just put that right here in the back. And so I'm going to just, and notice that this one's kind of sticking off. I'm not worried about that, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to pull that off, and then I just bend it back on itself. So don't worry about getting it torn off in there. Absolutely perfect. You can just pull it back and it'll be perfectly fine. So what I do then is I just stick it right here to the top. So now I know that that is polished pink. So as you can see, I've done that to all of my little Stampin' Spots, my in-color Stampin' Spots, and I've only inked a couple of them. So this one's Pale Papaya. So you can see that I've I've labeled them, and I have them good and inked up. All right. So now what you can do is you can see that they do have little grooves, so they do stack quite nice. So if I were traveling or going to take them with me somewhere, I would probably, to be safe, wrap maybe a rubber band around them to hold them all nice and tight together. And I would probably put them in a plastic bag or something along those lines, just because in the event that one of those caps do come off, they won't make a big mess, right? Okay, so I'm going to set those aside. And so now you've seen how to re-ink our classic stamp set pads and our uninked Stampin' Spots. So here's another idea. Have you ever gone to maybe a garage sale and you have found one of our old style stamp pads that have the firm foam pad in it? Well, maybe you have. So if so, I'm going to show you one here. This one is Marina Mist. Whew, that guy has been around the block, hasn't he? He has been used and abused. And so this is our old style pad. Let me show you. This is the new style. That is the old style on my left right here. And so this is Marina Mist. This color is retired, no longer available, but I just happened to come across this and I'm super excited. But when I get home, I can't find the re-inker, and now what am I going to do? Well, good question. So one thing that you can do is, because these are water-based or dye-based, you can actually run this through water, that's right, in a sink, through water, until it's completely clear. Now, one thing that I did do is I put a Ziploc bag on my hands, right, to protect my hands, and I went through and kind of worked all the ink out of my stamp pad as well. So this is, let me show you, this is a Watermelon Wonder stamp pad that I have cleaned out, and there is no residue at all coming out on my hands, okay? So my idea then would be, well, I could re-ink this Watermelon Wonder with one of my re-inkers with a color that is similar. And I can just relabel the top of my stamp pad with one of our current colors. So again, there's no need to throw that away, you know, if you can find a re-inker that's fairly close. And so maybe you would put Calypso Coral inside that stamp pad, or one of those types of orangey colors. So if I were to clean out my Marina Mist, which is this one right here, I would probably add a Balmy Blue in there. Now, best case scenario, you could purchase the new stamp pads, right? But this is in the event that you don't have the new stamp pads. Maybe you're on a budget, or maybe you have some of these older pads, but you don't have the refills. So it's just an idea of something else that you might be able to do. All right? All right, so I'm going to set those aside because I can totally hear some of you asking this question. The question I hear is, I see these little spots on top of your re-inkers, and how are you doing that? How are you labeling those? You know, I have to tell you, I've tried different things, and I think what I like the best is the one I'm going to show you, but I'm also going to show you some of these other ideas that I have done. So these little dots are basically some of the Stampin' Up! In color enamel dots that we've gotten along the way. You know, some of them match the colors, some of them don't, but they have adhesive on the back, and I just, if it's pink, I add a pink one on the top. You know, if I can find a Melon Mambo, then that would be best case scenario, but if not, at least I can see, okay, that one's pink, that one's clearly yellow. But let's just say you're like, okay, I love that idea, but I don't want to use my beautiful gems. No, I totally get that. I don't want you to use all your beautiful gems either. So I'm going to show you another way to accomplish the exact same thing. So here we go. I have a couple pieces of cardstock, and I have my Pale Papaya re-inker here. I also have my little turtle punch, yeah? So I'm going to take my turtle punch, and my goal is to punch a little hole or a little circle about that size. So I'm going to punch that. There's my circle, and I'm going to set my turtle aside. Then what I'm going to do is I have some mini glue dots here, and I'm going to take the mini glue dot. Can you see the little glue dot? And my goal is to get it in the center of the re-inker top. So there it is right there. And you can do one of two ways. You could set it right down on top of that little dot. It kind of picks it up, and then you can just push it into place, right? Or potentially you could set it on top, however you would like. But after you do that, then the tops of your re-inker bottles are also labeled, in a sense, the color that you're using. So if you have them all in a drawer, or however you're storing them, you can clearly see, okay, this one looks like a light green, that one definitely looks like a dark green, and you can start to identify them. So I hope that you liked that little tidbit. I love when my re-inker bottles are all up to date and I have the colors on the top. It's super, super helpful. And if you don't have the colored cardstock, potentially you have the marker in those colors and you just color on some cardstock and punch it out in the same sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. Before we move on to our other types of inks, I'm going to show you one more trick that I think you're going to find really helpful. So our Stampin Write markers, these are our Stampin Write markers, and they coordinate with our Stampin Write markers coordinate with our stamp pads. And, so these markers are pretty fantastic, but sometimes, when you're coloring, you kind of get that sort of, maybe they start to kind of wear out a little bit and you get kind of not great of, they don't write as great. So good news is the Stampin Write markers can absolutely be refilled. That's right. You can actually drop re-inker in these markers and it does work. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I bought these little Stampin' tweezer things off of, I think it was eBay or something like that, or Amazon. I just Googled tweezers and those came up and I thought, yep, that's perfect. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you exactly how I re-inked it. You're going to take these little tweezers and you're going to put them right around the edge, underneath where the tip is, and pull that out. You're going to set that down, shake up your inker bottle. Oh, this is not the right color. That's polished pink. So we need Melon Mambo. Shake it up, and then I'm going to set my marker down so I have a bit of stability, and I am going to very carefully, with a steady eye and a steady hand, try and drop 1 or 2 drops of ink inside the marker. Then I'm going to pick up my little tip again, stick it right back in there, and push it in there until it's nice and tight. And so ideally then, when I go to use that marker again, it should start to write better. And it takes a second to get it in there. And if it's not there yet, maybe you need to add more ink. And so in this scenario, I don't think I have enough in there, so I would pull that back off and do the exact same thing until I had the desired amount of ink in there to create the type of look that I'm after. Now here is the other end of your Stampin' Write marker. And so you can do the exact same thing on this one. You're going to basically come in and pull that straight out. Okay, exact same process. You're going to drop some of your re-inker inside the pen. I don't know if you could see it kind of going in there, but we're just going to drop that in there just like that. And then we're going to pick up our tip again, and we're going to push that right back in. And then once it's in there good and tight, again, you're going to have, oh, look at that. See how much darker and how much more re-inked that is? So that one clearly was fantastic. This one, I would absolutely add more on this end, but I have to tell you, doing that on camera and trying to see that little hole with a phone in my face is fairly difficult, but y'all are worth it, and I'm glad to give it a try. Now, the next question I hear is, can you re-ink Stampin' Blends? No, you cannot re-ink Stampin' Blends, not that I know of, absolutely. But Stampin' Write markers, they're clearly different. These are alcohol markers, these are water-based markers, and these can, these cannot, okay? All right, so let's move on to our other types of ink, and then we will wrap up our re-inking for today. Now, if you have enjoyed my tips and tricks so far and you find my video helpful, be sure to hit the like button or the thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe so that you're notified for future videos. And of course, don't forget to go to BrandysCards.com/beginners, and you can register there as well. That's right. And so you are welcome to register there so that you are emailed and notified of new videos to come. All right, so let's move on to our next ink that we have here. So let's just start with StazOn. So, you know, StazOn is a jet black, right? Solvent type ink. That's right. So it's going to give you that crisp image, but it's definitely good. You know, it's definitely permanent, right? It's good for those non-porous surfaces. And so when you're re-inking this guy, I'm going to show you a couple of things. One, when you pull the cover off, this is very important, this protective inner lining or this inner cover. That's going to protect the stamp pad. That's going to help keep it moist. But I do find that my StazOn does get a little bit drier. And I also sometimes get frustrated with this little cap. Now, we don't want to discard it. We definitely need it. But one thing that I thought might be kind of nice is if we did one thing here. We take some Stampin' Dimensionals and we go around here, maybe in these corners, right? And you're going to kind of tuck it in the corner. If we put some dimensionals in there, and you're going to actually layer these dimensionals up a second time. Yeah, so we're going to layer them up a second time. And so I'm going to layer the dimensional right back on top of the other one. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to make sure that this cap, this protective covering, is nice and, you know, in its place. So if I don't give it a little bit of padding for that, it might, when I close this lid, it might hold it up from the pad, and that's not what I want to happen. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my StazOn pad, and everything is closed in there nice. And then when I open it up, you can see that my cover sticks to the top. And the cool thing is now I know that my plastic cover's in there. I'm not going to lose it. It's in the right place. But then when I close it, I can see that it's nice and taut all the way around, and so that my StazOn pad should stay intact. So that is a little trick that I found super helpful. Now, StazOn refill, you only use StazOn refill in a StazOn stamp pad. And I'm going to open that guy up, and the same sort of thing. We're going to frost our cake. And I just kind of go down, you know, down one direction, and then I turn it down another direction. Now, these stamp pads, you know, I would ink it up, and then I would try it and stamp on it and see. Sometimes if you have a stamp, you can kind of stamp around and that will work it into place. I've never really had a problem with my StazOn or my Memento. I generally just ink it up just like that. Now, one little tip, you can store these StazOn ink pads as well as Memento Black upside down. Again, that's going to allow gravity to keep the ink at the surface of the stamp pad, just the same as it does with our Stampin' Up classic stamp pads. Because when you fold it, that stamp pad's actually upside down. Same type of thing here with the StazOn. Okay, so let's bring in Memento Black. I'm going to ink up my Memento Black. The Memento does not have a protective covering, and it's the same process, super easy. Sometimes I would even use like the tip of it, you know, and kind of mush it around, but just kind of like you're doing a cake. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that's perfect. And so that's exactly how I would re-ink my Memento Black, all right? And again, you can also store that upside down if you would like. Most importantly, make sure that you close it. If you kind of set it down and it's half open, you're going to let the air kind of seep inside of there, and it could potentially dry it out quicker. So make sure that you squeeze that down. It's nice and taut, and you can even store it upside down if you wish to. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The next one would be a pigment ink. This is our Versamark type stamp pad, and it's nice and sticky. Yep. And so this one I find a little bit more difficult. Here's our Versamark ink refill. And the reason that I say that is because it doesn't it's harder to come out of my bottle here. So my hands are kind of in the way, and I realize that. But for me, I don't know why, I hardly have the hand strength to do that. So I just kind of do a bunch of drops, and then I take a clean spoon and I just kind of push it into the stamp pad. And I just push it all around. You want to make sure that whatever you're using, a little palette tool or whatever it is, that it's not sharp, so that way when you move the ink around, it doesn't damage that stamp pad. So that's pretty much it with the Versamark ink refill. Very easy to do. It's just a little bit harder to get that sticky ink out of the bottle onto the stamp pad. So that one is pretty easy too. Now the next one that I have is the classic stamping pad. And I want to show you one thing, that this is the older style that we have of our craft stamp pad. And you can see it's kind of that, it's kind of that foamy type stamp pad. But then here is our new one. So very interesting, I thought. I actually just purchased this the other day, and I can clearly see a bit of a difference. And I'm thinking maybe this one's just been used and abused a little bit longer. But to re-ink your classic white, all you have to do is the same sort of thing. You are going to shake it up and get that ink. I find that I need to use both hands, and I'm just going to go back and forth like such, and just add that classic or that white craft ink. Make sure that my spoon is clean. And then I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm just going to go up and down, and I'm going to push that ink into the stamp pad, right? And so this stamp pad does not have the ink in it, and so that's how it comes when you purchase it. So it's going to take me a little while to kind of get that in there, but I can get this inked up really good, and and add as much of the ink in there as I think that I need to get my desired image. And again, I'm just kind of going up and down and pushing that ink inside the stamp pad. Now I would do this exact same thing with my current stamp pad that I have over here to the other side of me. And so I will finish this one later. But when you purchase your craft stamp pad, I'm going to show you here in the Stampin' Up catalog. And let's see, here it is right here. Yes. So you can purchase your stamp pad, and then you can also purchase your refill. You see that? So the pad comes uninked, and with it including a refill. So when you buy the stamp pad, you also get the refill, and the pad comes uninked. And that's what I wanted to show you here today, is how you can ink it up. So again, it might take a little bit longer to add some more inks to that, but you can absolutely do it. So I hope that you found that super helpful on how to re-ink your stamp pads. Of course, most importantly, you want to make sure that you're using the right type of ink and the right type of stamp pad. So, dye inks with the dye refills, StazOn with the StazOn, right? So that is what's most important, as you get those right. And then, of course, try some of those uninked Stampin' Spots if you maybe just want to try a color and see if you really like it, or you want some stamp pads to travel with. Those are a really good option. And maybe you have a marker that might need a little refresher. So now you know how to do that too. So if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to hit that, click that thumbs up button, the like button, and be sure to subscribe. Now, if you missed my prior video on the different types of inks, you're going to want to go to BrandysCards.com/beginners, and you can go back and learn about what each type of ink is and how it works and when you're supposed to use it. And then maybe get a refresher here on how to refill it if you or should you need to do that. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful to have you here with me, and I hope that I've inspired you to go in there and maybe pull off some of the lint off your stamp pads, re-ink those, get them cleaned up, and ready for a lot of stamping. All right? Thanks for joining me today. Take care, everyone. Bye.